Expressive. Our world is filled with people who love to express their views and opinions via the media. Instead of the platform being the internet, TV, or talk radio, we've chosen a very quiet way of being expressive with sweatshirts. With needle and thread and fabric, my guest Mary Malari has created ways to showcase personality through sewing, specifically expressive sweatshirts. Mary, it's always a pleasure to have you as my guest.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm always happy for the invitation, and I have more great ways with sweatshirts. Our first expressive sweatshirt is created by cutting off the bottom ribbing and turning it into a fashionable cowl collar. I call this the bottom to top sweatshirt. Also turn up the bottom edges of both the hem and sleeve ends, add vent openings, and your sweatshirt is no longer a silent bystander.
Expressive sweatshirts, that's what's coming up next on Sewing with Nancy.
Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, is made possible by Baby Lock, a complete line of sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines and sergers. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Madeira, specializing in embroidery, quilting, and special effect threads, because creativity is never black and white. Koala Studios, fine sewing furniture custom built in America. Clover, makers of sewing, knitting, quilting, and embroidery products for over 25 years. Experience the Clover difference. And amazing designs and Class A needles.
As you can see, Mary likes to name her sweatshirts, and this is the bottom to top sweatshirt, so we better start looking at the close-up at the lower edge. And there's some changes.
That's right. The ribbing is removed, and there's a vent sewn into the bottom. And then as we move up the shirt, we find that the bottom ribbing has been used and fashioned into a cowl collar for the neckline. The original ribbing was taken out of the neck, and we have some big changes, and then we finish it off with the sleeves with, again, a vent, and the bottom edge is rolled up.
So a lot of changes on this pigment dyed sweatshirt, but really quite easy to create.
Here we have the bottom of the sweatshirt again, and when we cut ribbing off, it's always good to make sure that we're making that straight. And we find, Nancy, in working with sweatshirts that they have different widths of ribbing. And so here's a much wider ribbing. This is narrower, so we'll work with the one that came on the shirt. But sometimes it's fun to mix and match, too.
Mary has a whole bag filled with removed ribbings, and then the cuffs can be removed at least 5 inches. It's going to be a 3/4 length turn back, so you cut off 5 inches from both sides.
You're going to be using that fabric later to make the vents.
And then the ribbing was cut off at the neckline, and you do stay stitch before cutting. You know, stitch a row of there's a tiny row of stitching around the neckline before doing the cutting.
That's a very important step, Nancy. And then I followed that up with turning under and stitching just the front neckline.
Okay, so it's just a 1/4 inch turn and edge stitched front only.
And now it's time to put the cowl collar on.
Okay.
I actually cut this a little shorter than the actual ribbing, which was quite long, and I wanted a shorter collar. So I'm going to, I seamed it.
And I know that you put it over your neckline. You kind of tried it on to see where it ended and how it draped. So
that's right. That's the best way to plan this. Now I have a seam in the center back, and if I don't like the looks of that seam, I can sew a patch of extra ribbing over the top of it just to make it a little neater. But we're going to start by pinning this beneath the center back of the sweatshirt neckline. And then we're also going to mark and place the center, the front center. And along the way we'll be pinning, but we want to make sure that this is a flattering curve. So actually you do need to try this on first and kind of establish as you're trying it on how to position this. And then after carefully pinning, we're then going to be ready to sew this cowl neckline to the sweatshirt.
And it's really just this top stitching along the existing, and I maybe need to flatten this out a little bit, but the existing stitching lines to attach.
Right, you have a guide to use.
And the lower edge, because this is a pigment dyed, you'll see the fleece side come upward and you top stitch this into place, or you could use a blanket stitch. And here's a close-up of the blanket stitch. And you can just sew the hem, the inside out, and then the vent.
We cut from one of our sleeve ends, Nancy, two 2 by 4 inch pieces of fleece, and then we're going to position that on over the edge we've established, well actually inside the sleeve, and then we're going to bring out this edge and pin it into place. And I think we have a sample to show.
How about that? We have a sample.
And the same technique is used on the bottom edge of the sweatshirt as well.
So blanket stitching along the edges, have a little vents in the sleeve and the hemline, and the bottom to top sweatshirt is yours to wear. Make a casual sweatshirt even better with the addition of another favorite fabric, denim. Buy strips cut from old jeans, trim the neckline, sleeves, and the centers of floral appliques. It's definitely a denim do-over. Mary's fabrics of choice, denim and sweatshirts, are combined here. Mary, you did a program with me many years ago on denim makeovers.
That's right.
Well,
I've done and many sweatshirt programs.
Yes, so here we have both fabrics. As in the first sweatshirt of this program, you remove the ribbing, turned under the edge and top stitched, and we'll show you how to add a denim trim.
That's right, and then the appliques have a little denim on them as well, and then the sleeves have vents, and the edges are trimmed also with strips of denim.
So first, the denim.
That's right. I have got a collection of jeans of many different shades. I like both the right and wrong sides of denim too, and it's easy to cut strips. I cut strips that are 1 inch in length, in width, and then I cut strips that are 1.5 inches in width. And here's my little collection so far. Now, they don't look so exciting, but I'm going to put them in a mesh bag and put them in the laundry, washer and dryer, and when they're done, they're going to come out looking much more interesting with a bit of frayed edge. So it won't fall apart, but it's just more interesting looking. And then I'll build a neckline. I'm going to measure my neckline and cut strips of bias to combine. I have here one set, and you see how I've pieced many times across the leg of a pair of jeans. You can't get the full length you need, but so I piece and combine different shades of denim.
And just overlap them,
That's
really.
right. I don't even worry about seams. And then here's another neckline all ready to stitch. The red stitching on the edge is zigzagging to hold the 2 layers together.
Now keep in mind that we use the technique, as we mentioned earlier, stay stitch the neckline, cut off the ribbing, then turned under the edges. And then this new neckline is stitched all the way around. We have right sides meeting.
That's right. This first part of the neckline is pinned, and I've already sewed the back half in place. And then after getting the strips sewn on, I do a bit of top stitching to hold the edges of the denim inside the shirt.
And when you complete this and flip it up, it's easy to work with.
That's right. So we turn our attention next to the sleeves, and here they have the same kind of edging, the 2 layers of 1.5 inch and 1 inch denim. And then there's another strip of 10 inches of denim that's cut, and one strip is sewn to the sweatshirt 2 inches below the center fold. And then we're going to pin and stitch the second edge, pull the first edge kind of out of the way a little bit so we can stitch that second edge down. We're going to trim off the ends to be level with the sleeve edge, and we're almost done. We have one little short stitch cutting to do.
This shows the finished stitching that we had of the vent, and where she stitched one side and then the other, and then there's the sweatshirt underneath. So then you just trim away from the underside. And let me just show you, here's the trimmed vent. And I think it's very clever.
Very easy too, Nancy.
And one quick final addition is making an applique. Because this is a pigment dyed sweatshirt, the reverse side is very textural and very interesting. This is the reverse side of this kind of
the pigment sweatshirt, yes.
Terracotta color, and it's fused on, very interesting. So denim, sweatshirts, buttons, and a little creativity.
Give your sweatshirt a layered look by adding parts of a shirt. Remove the sweatshirt ribbings and stitch a shirt collar neckline, sleeve cuffs, and a shirt tail hemline. This sweatshirt design was created by Laura, Joyce, and Kristen at Calico Country Sewing Center in West Frankfort, Illinois.
It's always interesting when you're merging two recycled pieces together, or two different components, and this design certainly is charming.
And besides that, Nancy, it's the layered look without two garments. For some people, that's too much to be wearing.
It is. And we're going to cut the neckline larger, a little bit larger, you'll soon see, and then finish the inside with ribbing, or from the bottom
of the
sweatshirt. And we'll have an automatic applique created. You can place, I like your asymmetrical placement. And then part of the shirt is at the cuff.
The sleeve cuffs are added. The original shirt sleeve is cut shorter. And then down at the bottom, we hem the sweatshirt, but we also then add to it the shirt tail. And it's just the shirt tail, it's not the entire shirt. So this is a fun look, I think, and easy to create.
So you need compatible sweatshirt fabric, or a sweatshirt and a shirt fabric, and you might have to do some fitting, or sizing, maybe not fitting, but sizing to get the two widths to be compatible.
Many times the sweatshirt is wider than the shirt, and here on this sample I've pinned one side, pinned it narrower. That's going to make a better fit in many cases, and on the other side I've sewn the seam to make the sweatshirt narrower.
So it hasn't been trimmed yet, but
I would
the goal would be so that the sweatshirt width and the shirt width will meet.
Match, yes. So that's the first thing that you'll need to do.
And then you cut off part of the shirt tail.
That's right. I suggest 6 inches, but that can be a length of your choice.
So here we have at least one button showing of the shirt tail, and this has a more tapered look, and you can see that Mary has added that shirt tail to the lower hem area, just tucked it underneath, and then did a second row of top stitching around the edge. Now I mentioned earlier that the neckline was cut a little bit deeper than a traditional neckline that we've been doing throughout this program. This time, Mary, you measured a ½ inch below the stitching.
And I stay stitched on that line first, and that's a little deeper than I would normally do. But we want a bigger neckline to be able to get into this sweatshirt.
So then after trimming off around the marking, after you've stitched, you wouldn't use this color ribbing, but we did it for contrast purposes.
Again, saving those ribbings that come from the bottom of another sweatshirt, I made a 1 inch wide folded ribbing, and that's sewn into the neckline. And then we're going to be pinning this into place. And this is sewn down with a 1 inch, with a ½ inch seam allowance all the way around.
Now, at this point, after you've done the stitching, you'll find that your shirt is a little shorter, has different pieces, but yet this portion at the top, the neckline, the collar, is going to be a very crucial portion of the fit. So try on the shirt, and here we have the shirt on the mannequin, and then slip your sweatshirt over the shirt.
That's right, and then we're going to pin the sweatshirt and the collar together so we know how we're going to attach them so that they look right. And you would not necessarily put it on a mannequin, but on your own body to do this.
And get a sewing buddy to help you.
That's right.
Now the trimming of the shirt is next, and leave it pinned, and we'll show our viewers what we've done for trimming.
This has the look of a dickie.
Old-fashioned dickie, right?
That's right, and it's about 6 inches below the collar stand that we cut the shirt, and we curve it around to the back neck. But Nancy, it's important to note that we sew this on only in the back neckline of the sweatshirt. That's so we can get into this. The stretchy sweatshirt fabric won't stretch so much if we sew the woven to it.
So after you put it on, you just tuck it in.
Inside, that's right.
Tuck it in. Now the cuffs can be cut from the remaining sweatshirt, the remaining shirt.
That's right. On this shirt, we have part of the button and buttonhole section of the front of the shirt, and I have here another shirt with a pattern I made for the shirt cuff, and that's just going to be cut from the front, and I've spaced it so there's a button in the center of my cuff. Now that's optional. You might not have enough fabric.
Right. And in the booklet that accompanies today's program, you'll get all the dimensions, how short to cut the sleeve. Then you finish the cuff, meet the inside of the cuff inside the sweatshirt to the right side of the cuff, sew around the edges, and then turn it to the outside. And finally, we are going to go through the applique, and applique can be added, but I like your idea of stitching it to some of the fabric. And here at the computerized machine, we have the shirt fabric hooped, the decorative fabric placed on top of it, and the machine is doing the outline stitch. The second step is to trim away close to that outline stitch with an embroidery scissors. And then the third step is to the satin stitching, which is already digitized or programmed into the machine, and do the finishing stitches. Mary, you've then cut the background fabric to a size you'd like.
I've used a buttonhole stitch to attach it to the sweatshirt with the horizontal stitches going out.
So, a shirt, a sweatshirt, some computerized embroidery, and you have a new design. This asymmetrical styled sweatshirt is remarkably easy to stitch to the front of the shirt. We have another expressive change on this shirt with shaped hemlines at the bottom of the sweatshirt and cuffed areas. We call it the Orient Expression. A sweatshirt never had such style. You'll see in this sweatshirt that we are not adding any additional embellishment, but just utilizing parts and different pieces.
That's right. The bottom ribbing is removed and then restitched to the neckline in a V neck.
And we do have some jelly roll or 2.5-inch strips that finish the cuff area and the hem.
That's right. I've used 2 different strips. Why not? Because
yes.
it's more fun that way.
Uh-huh.
And we start with a neck change. And we've done this before on many sweatshirts, Nancy, to stay stitch a 1/4 inch around the bottom of the neck ribbing.
And then trim.
Yes, we cut that off, and you'll see that stitching here. And then we mark 3 inches down from the center, and then draw 2 straight lines to connect that point to the stay stitching, and then another line which we angle toward the side of the sweatshirt.
So just continue that line all the way to the side. Gives us a stitching line. Now you'll see in the instructions that accompany today's program that you cut down the ribbing from the bottom to fit the neckline, not as wide.
That's right. It's about 1.5 inches wide, but that's by personal preference also. And we start to sew here at the point of the V, and we stretch the ribbing slightly as we stitch, and we guide the ribbing, of course, around the neckline and then back to the point of the V. And at that point you can try it on, and you'd turn up this edge of the ribbing, and also then you'd overlap, and then continue to sew, and then of course there's that little V piece that you cut out of the neckline.
So remove this portion, so it's just an overlapped section. Now the hemming, you'll trim off the cuffs and the hem, of course, because that's the ribbing area, and you've placed a facing around the hem.
And this would of course be sewn in place. And next we're going to shape this a little bit by using a curve. And I've placed that curved area kind of off center, and I use this tool to help me draw a curve that's equal on both sides of the area I've chosen.
And it's generally used to shape pockets, but we're now shaping curves, and you stitch following the curve.
I also do that on the back of the sweatshirt just for a little bit of balance.
And then on this one, you will find that Mary has used a pinking shears to do trimming and then cut into the shape. And then we just turn this to the inside.
And we do a little top stitching to hold that in place. And of course then the sleeves are handled in the same way. And on the sleeves, the curved edges are placed on the fold of the sleeve.
One sleeve has a dark facing, the other sleeve has a lighter facing, makes for some interesting details. So taking that ribbing from the bottom of the shirt, adding it in an asymmetrical Orient Expression design is a really interesting, classy way of dressing up a sweatshirt. Continuing our topic on makeovers, this Nancy's Corner segment features an individual who has made it his business to make over clients from head to toe. Perhaps you've seen him on a shopping network or used his cosmetics, yet he also has an interest in revising and restyling clothes. Welcome Dimitri James, who is a Hollywood makeup artist, now a guest on Sewing with Nancy. Welcome, Dimitri.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. I'm excited to be here.
Well, delighted to have you. And you were telling me that you were on a shoot,
Yes.
photo shoot, doing makeup and styling, and there were some interesting clothes being worn.
That's right. It was in Australia, and I'd been flown out there to do the shoot. And the outfits they were showing were capri pants and gypsy skirts with these fabulous tank tops that were embellished on the top. And I asked what the price was of the tank tops. They said, well, they're over $120 each. And I thought, well, that would be so easy to make. And so, well,
Ta-da.
yeah. So here they are.
And here's your first beginning spot. You started with some,
These are the originals.
and they were $9.
$9 each.
Sure, easy
Still, I left the tag on.
to prove it. But then you made remarkable revisions.
Right.
Now, this first one, you bought the fabric, we should say, is not part of the T-shirt. This
No.
was, you bought the fabric on a remnant table.
Right, on the off the remnant table, and because you don't need very much, and I bought expensive fabric.
Sure.
And created
Layers.
the 3 layers of ruffles and the little tie.
And then you also added some that same tie fabric around the edge to make it very interesting. And this was about a $20 top.
Yes, it ended up costing $20. Well, the material was $10 for both tank tops, and the tank tops are about $10 each, so $30 for both tank tops. And they'd be fabulous over the gypsy skirts that are in style
Sure.
now, or capri pants.
Great renovation. Then we'll show our viewers the remaining restyling, and this has some of the same fabric. It's a very lovely fabric, gathered down the center, sewn together, then gathered down the center, and then included in the neckline.
Right, and I included the neckline. So wouldn't this look great over a pair of black capris,
Yes.
or a black gypsy skirt?
But the size, Dimitri, is not going to fit me.
Well, I could only go remnant shopping, I figured, so I better go really small.
All right. Very nice. Now, in your styling and makeup, you have found that you work makeup, you work beauty, and you're an author.
I am. The book is Becoming Beauty, and I teach women how to style themselves head to toe. Makeup, skincare, hair, clothing, accessories, everything. Like right down to how to pick the right eyeglasses for your face frame, for your face shape.
So that makes it really easy for us. And then back to the sewing and quilting part of it, you do other renovations, and we have some images to show what Dimitri has done with gowns.
Right. I noticed when I was in Las Vegas that all the young girls were wearing these fabulous tops with jeans, and really all they were they looked like the old evening gowns that
Sure.
everyone used to wear in the 60s and 70s and 50s, and they were just top versions of them. So I went to thrift store on dollar days,
Okay.
and I bought some thrift store dresses for $1 each and cut them into tops that would be current today and perfect for a glam night out, and they were $1 each.
Well, here's the first one. It's in the shades of blue. And in this image that we were seeing, you have 2 versions.
Right. So first, I think you see the long dress, and then what you're looking at is is a top made out of it with the ruffled bottom as the bottom part of the top. The second one is the top cut at a diagonal across the bias, which lengthens a torso, and then you're going to see a scarf that I
Sure.
improvised.
So a lot of cutting, maybe a little sewing, but you have the basis there at a thrift store.
Right, $1.
$1. You may not be that lucky to get it for $1, but
We have dollar days in mine.
sure. Oh, good.
It's once a month.
Then this next one in black is kind of a halter type of dress.
Right. And I saw a lot of this type of dress in Vegas too when I was there, or top. And I thought, well, when I saw this dress, I thought that is so similar to the tops the girls are wearing out
Sure.
with jeans.
Sure.
Or slacks and high heels. And I love this one because it had a little bling to it. And of course, it's unfinished. I just showed you the cut.
Yes, sir. And our last image today shows the same thing, a white chiffon type dress. And just a little creative cutting,
Right.
and you have a interesting top to wear.
Right.
Night out.
Night out. There you are.
Well, in this series of Sewing with Nancy, we have gone from sweatshirts to tank tops, now to glam, with evening gowns and renovations. And Dimitri, thanks for being our guest.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you. And for more information on our Nancy's Corner guests, such as Dimitri, please go to Sewing with Nancy. Click on Nancy's Corner. In the 2400 series, you can find information about all our guests, including Dimitri James. Well, this wraps up our two-part series on sweatshirts with Mary Malari. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Mary Malari and Nancy have written a fully illustrated book entitled Expressive Sweatshirts that includes all the information from this two-part series. It's $14.99 plus shipping and handling. To order the book, call 800-336-8373 or visit our website at sewingwithnancy.com/2411. Order item number BK2411. Expressive Sweatshirts. Credit card orders only. To pay by check or money order, call the number on the screen for details. Visit Nancy's website at sewingwithnancy.com for more information on this program. Sewing with Nancy, TV's longest-airing sewing and quilting program with Nancy Zieman, has been brought to you by Baby Lock, Madeira Threads, Koala Studios, Clover, Amazing Designs, and Classe Needles. Closed captioning funding provided by Rowenta. Sewing with Nancy is a co-production of Nancy Zieman Productions and Wisconsin Public Television.